Hello, this is Blue Star, Defender of Equestria, and this is my Afterthoughts review to My Little Pony Make Your Mark, Chapter 6. It may have taken a while, but these are the moments that make MLP so special. And yes, I have upgraded my commander's chair, so I hope every pony likes. So overall, this chapter was really good. This was definitely like the culmination and climax of everything that's happened in the previous chapters. And I think it goes to show that these truly are chapters. These are not like seasons. They're one part of one bigger arcing story. So I think for them to call these chapters and not just seasons was a very good choice. So as always, I'm going to do this almost in two parts. There's going to be sort of the spoiler-free section, and then there's going to be the weapons-free section where I talk about whatever I want. But we're not at that point yet, so since there is so much, climax and almost confrontation in this chapter is honestly pretty heavy, both in bad ways and also really good ways too. So there was also a lot of exposition in this chapter because there was a lot of things that had to be explained. And overall, I really think that this chapter was really successful. It took things that were set up in previous episodes and chapters, and they all come to conclusion here. But overall, I think that this chapter worked very well. I mean, it was incredibly heavy, and I think overall they were successful in balancing out those things, and there were some fun moments here. And overall, this chapter was really good, and I enjoyed it, and I look forward to watching it some more, and I look forward to seeing where the story goes from here. So, and all I'm gonna say here is that I'm very pleased that this is not the end of the story and that there's more MLP to watch in the future. So, you are now about to enter the spoiler-free fire zone. So if you don't want spoilers, you probably shouldn't watch the rest of this video. But again, it's been ages since the episodes are uploaded, so you probably know already anyway, so no. So now it's time to go weapons free and talk about whatever I want. So overall, I really liked this chapter. It was really successful in what it was trying to do, and it really gave a satisfying conclusion, possibly, to Opaline's story. And even though at the time I was kind of shocked by it, it's like, oh no, Opaline, no, don't do it, no! Opaline, she chose poorly. The Isle of Scaly was just getting to know the dragons and in some ways catching up on their story, their backstory, and of course, Dragon Lord Spike. Oh my gosh! It's like, I did not see this coming in the slightest, but I actually really like this. It's kind of difficult because this went on the list of things I thought they were not going to do, literally bringing back characters from Friendship is Magic, because they're clearly trying to walk this line of like referencing Friendship is Magic, but not being like tied to it. So, like, if you've never seen Friendship is Magic, you're still going to enjoy this series. And the long story short is, they continue to be very successful at it, even as they are literally bringing in characters from Friendship is Magic. So, I actually think bringing back Spike actually makes sense and works really well, because basically he was a baby in Friendship is Magic, but now he's all grown up and actually in charge of almost in some ways the next generation of dragons, and I actually really like that idea, and I look forward to seeing where they go with that. So, I actually really like the Isle of Scaly in that, we got to learn about the dragons, their backstory, and a little bit about Opaline, and some of those things are actually kind of important for what happens later on, so overall, I think that was really good. Now moving on to Roots of All Evil Part 1. I don't think this episode will ever go on what I call the actively enjoy list, so, yeah, the first time I watched this, I was almost in shock, and it's like, this is terrible, no! I actually missed the commercials. Can we please have one? Because I don't want to watch anymore. No! Then again, knowing what happens and what's going to happen in the next episode, it's like, it's not as bad as I think it is, but it's still kind of bad though, so. But even so, this episode I think in some ways is setting up perfectly for the next episode, because this is the ponies essentially attempting to figure this out and in some ways deal with this on their own. And all those things fail, is the short answer. Because yeah, the ponies are making incredibly bad decisions here. Sometimes they might know it. And there was this moment where Spike is like giving his speech to sort of like rally the dragons to go and, like storm the castle and, get back the Dragonstone. And there's this little moment where he's like, I think he realizes that charging headlong into the lair of this supervillain that's already captured 2 dragons is probably not a good idea, but if they don't move now, they may not be able to at all, so... Gathering all the ponies around the tree, after Jazz told them that, oh, Opaline came and there were these vines that came out from the tree and they took every pony's cutie marks. So really, gathering around the thing that was stealing every pony's cutie marks was not a good idea. Partsuri are slightly annoyed at Zip because it's like she's trying to understand this, but really, Jazz just told you. But at the same time, as a computer programmer, I've kind of been in this kind of situation of you're trying to figure this out and looking through everything and trying to understand. And sometimes that leads you to completely ignore what's going on over there and basically not see the forest through the trees, kind of a thing. Zip is letting, in some ways, her curiosity and her desire to sort of like understand what's going on fully, to not listen to something that she's just been told. To me, you know, them trying to like figure this out and understand this is kind of a double-edged sword, in that on the one hand, it's kind of important, but at the same time, it feels like, does it really matter? Does it really matter exactly how Opaline's doing that? If she's using 1 tree or 4, does that really matter in some ways? It's a kind of a problem when the audience knows more than the characters do, because we saw in Nightmare on Main Street, you know, we actually saw Opaline doing this for the first time, that she used, you know, her tree to, you know, basically infiltrate Maritime Bay. So we already know this, but the rest of the pony characters don't. At the same time, it was actually kind of important to remind the audience it's not just 3 trees, it's 4. Because it's kind of important what happens in the next episode, and yeah, it was months since the last chapter, so it's probably a good idea to remind the audience of that. Still, I feel like that whole thing of them trying to understand this is kind of unnecessary for them to try to understand this, especially since we're in a crisis. Opaline is out there right now, still stealing the cutie mark. As Pip says, is this really the time to be studying? No! But at the same time, the thing that Zip reveals during that session was actually very important for the ponies coming to the correct conclusion of the next part. So overall, I guess that whole thing was both a success and a failure at the same time. But in some ways, I guess it was kind of supposed to be. In its most simplest thing is the first part was really the ponies failing. I think this is trying to show what didn't work. So when we see what does work in the second part, we really understand why the second part works so well. So, I think this part is also about, we have to go to the valley before we can appreciate the beauty of the mountaintop. So, that, yeah, sometimes it's a danger basically pushing down the audience into like depression, because if you don't bring them back up again, it basically feels like a downer. But oh my gosh, did the second part deliver. So now on to the second part, and there's almost parts of me that want to do a whole video about this and why this works so well and why it's so awesome. So there's a lot of bad stuff that's going on in this part, just like the first one. But the tone of this episode is completely different, and I think Pip's line really shows why. I sang a song to distract Opaline, and it almost worked! Yay! Pip should be sad. Pip should be like, I tried to sing a song to distract Opaline, but she took our cutie marks anyway, so I'm all sad. But she doesn't see it that way, because she didn't give in to what Opaline was trying to do to her, and she used her own sparkle to do so. So she basically used what makes her special and unique to stand up to Opaline, and even though it met with failure, she doesn't feel like a failure because she stood up to Opaline, and in this situation, that's all that mattered. So, I think the short answer, I'm very passionate about this episode, I think, because at the heart of this, it's really about Opaline as a bully and the ponies standing up to her and being successful at standing up to her by being united and using what makes them special and unique to stand up to Opaline. So, and I think ultimately that's what this series and this entire generation is about. It's about not only just finding out what makes them special, it's like how can they take that thing that makes them special and make a difference in this world, to make their own mark in this world, and they so accomplished it here. So, roar! Again, I could do almost a whole video on why I think this moment is so awesome and why it's so special and cool, but I'm gonna talk about some of the more objective things first. I think that this episode was really successful in what it was trying to do because it gave each of the main six an opportunity to stand up to Opaline, each in their own way. And even though each one meets with failure, it was still really awesome to watch. I mean, like, Izzy's was actually pretty funny and entertaining. I mean, again, sure, Izzy loses at the end, but she jammed Opaline good. Covers her with glitter and glue and yarn, and even at one point has the shield on her horn. The last episode was pretty difficult and hard, but to have these moments where each of the main six gets to almost, triumph a little bit over Opaline starts to bring us back up a little bit, and they were just fun on their own, and I liked them, so... The ultimate conclusion of this, I think, works so well on so many levels. I'm sure there's gonna be the typical, oh, this is too easy, it's a Deus Ex Machina, this comes out of nowhere. And I would say in this case, I don't think that's the case at all. There was a lot of things that were set up in previous episodes and even previous chapters, like the locket was actually set up in the previous chapter, and they dedicated like a scene or two to it in that chapter. And even in this episode, they made the point of showing Sunny actually seeing the locket and deciding to bring it with her. It wasn't just like, oh, I put on this piece of jewelry and, oh, it actually turned out to be a magical item. Oh my gosh. It's like, I may not understand it now, but I think this is more than just a piece of jewelry. This could be important, so I'm gonna take it with me. So I don't think anything, quote unquote, comes out of nowhere. And I must admit, sure, when all of a sudden all the ponies are, basically working together and, working against Opaline, it feels way too easy because I think that's kind of the point that they're trying to make. Because when all the ponies are united and working together against Opaline, it's just one pony versus the whole of Equestria. So, no wonder this is easy. That's in some ways the lesson that they're trying to teach, that when we're all working together for the same thing, there's almost nothing that we can't overcome. So, but regardless, I love this moment. It is just so emotionally satisfying, and it's just so beautiful. As a reactor, I still am like, I'm so disappointed that I wasn't doing and saying more at that moment, but at the same time, the reason why is because this is such an amazing moment. I don't want to talk over this. I just want to enjoy this and just see what happens next. So, and I honestly think it's impossible for someone to watch this and not be at least teary-eyed on the inside. So, to say that things are bad right now is an understatement. So to see the ponies triumphing this way by coming together and working truly together, it's just so touching. It's just like, no, I can't let my subscribers see me cry, but I'm crying on the inside, I tell you. No. And honestly, I think this works so well on so many levels, because what this ultimately comes down to is the ponies not giving into the fear that Opaline is causing. It's about them coming together and standing up against Opaline. And once they do that, there's no contest here. And oh yeah, sure, it feels like another and sure, this feels like a classic MLP moment because it kind of is. We sung a song and it fixed everything. Roar! But at the same time, it's not the song that's fixing this, it's the ponies that are fixing this. So, roar! Because if the ponies had just decided to like cower under their beds, none of this would have happened. Reminds me of a line from Fraggle Rock. It's like, you didn't have to go. You could have stayed and cowered with us. And I also like the song was actually set up in the scene with Pip and Zip trying to, distract Opaline, and that we actually hear the remix version of the song before we hear the actual version of the song. But that so sets up the song so well because it wasn't just, oh, we stood in front of the tree and, I just all of a sudden started spontaneously singing a song. It's like, no, that song was actually one of Pip's songs that probably every pony has heard at some point, and they're actually using it to bring each other together. So sure, the song was part of the solution, but it wasn't the solution. The ponies could have gone home and cowered under their beds or something, but if they had, none of this would have happened. And that's what makes this moment so special. They're being incredibly brave and courageous by standing up to that fear. And even though Opaline has done all these horrible things to them, they're still standing up against her. And in the end, they prevail. So, roar! And it was just so touching. I really like that each pony is standing up to Opaline in their own way. I think the scene with Misty really in some ways shows that. Misty starts off in the previous episode being like, I'm too scared to face Opaline. And then in the next episode, she's like, get away from my tree. Sort of the thing that I might have had a problem with is that how and when did that happen? How did Misty go from, you know, being too scared to leave the Crystal Bright House, pretty much the only safe place in Equestria, to confronting Opaline without a chance of being able to stop her? What does Misty hope to accomplish by standing up to Opaline this way? The satisfaction of not letting Opaline do these kinds of things to her anymore. Misty, like all the ponies, meets with failure, but she didn't just simply roll over and let Opaline do these kinds of things to her anymore. And I think that was what she was trying to accomplish. I think she also was trying to, in some ways, quote-unquote, turn Opaline from the dark side a little bit. Sunny was probably trying more to do that. But yeah, she's trying to basically say what she really feels about Opaline, and that she does feel very empathetic and she feels bad for her. Even though you have all this power and you think you have friends because you're making them bow before you, you're still alone. You still don't understand the magic of friendship. Who wouldn't feel sorry for somebody like that? So yeah, the second part of this totally takes us from that valley of the first episode and it brings us up to a mountaintop, and it's a pretty awesome mountaintop where we get to see the ponies not give in to the fear of Opaline and instead stand up for themselves and become united truly as one. And it was just such a beautiful, awesome moment, and it was so cool to have that moment where it was almost the generations coming together. We had, in some ways, the current, generation and sort of like the elements of harmony from the previous generation coming together to defeat this supervillain once and for all. And it was just so cool. Roar! These are the kinds of things that make this show special, that make it more than just another television show, and I think they did it so well, and it was just so cool. So, roar! The ending of Opaline's story, and possibly of Opaline herself, was actually pretty interesting and also kind of rough. I mean, yeah, honestly, I do feel bad for Opaline because this ending is pretty rough for her. I honestly did kind of think they were going down the redemption arc with, the things that they had in like chapter 4, where we got to see her as a filly and learn kind of sort of her backstory stuff. And I did like the whole thing that they did with her. I feel bad for her because I think this is every pony's first, thing of like, my cutie mark, no! But it's not her cutie mark she's running after. She's running after her power. They're making it clear. It's like, my cutie mark, my power! And after thinking about it some more, I think her cutie mark is basically her as a fire alicorn, so it almost represents power itself. Opaline isn't chasing after a cutie mark, it's more like she's chasing after a sword over a cliff, and sadly she goes over the cliff with it. So oh no! I did like Opaline both as a villain and as a character, and in some ways it makes me sad to see her go this way. But then again, Tell Your Tale is pretty clear that this may not be the end of Opaline, so we could be seeing her again, possibly for a redemption arc, or possibly more evil scheming, but I guess we shall see. But for now, I don't think Opaline's going anywhere. And considering that she was responsible for pretty much every single magical problem that Equestria has had since the ending of Friendship is Magic, I think it's totally appropriate for her to be imprisoned for a while, but we shall see what happens with Opaline, or is this truly the end of Opaline? But we shall see! So the supervillain has been defeated. I guess the show is over. No! But don't worry, kids, there's another episode! Yay! And actually, since it's a two-parter, it's technically 2 episodes, so yay! In some ways, again, adds to this sort of heaviness of this chapter, in that we sort of have a season finale and a season premiere pretty much in the same chapter, so and things are bad when the characters themselves are saying that they basically want a nap. So I really hope at the ending of Secret of Starlight they finally got that nap, because they definitely deserved one. So roar. But even though Secrets of Starlight basically introduces a new supervillain, this episode was actually pretty fun and I actually liked it a lot. roar. I think Secrets of Starlight was actually a great way to end this chapter. I think this episode really served two purposes, which was the first was just, okay, we gotta lighten the mood and have a little bit of fun, because the last episode was really, really heavy. It was also to reassure everyone, it's like, I know we've just defeated the supervillain, but don't worry, there's more to come, because here's a brand new supervillain, so roar. The long story short is that Netflix series, no matter how successful they are, don't really run for very long, because Netflix just simply can't fund every single series they have. Must admit, I was worried about that. It's like, hey, we just defeated the supervillain. Does that mean the series is over? No! It's like, no, I'm not ready for the series to be over. I want to see more. Roar. Overall, I really did like Secrets of Starlight because it had a really cool song in it. It was fun and lighthearted. It did keep the story going, and I definitely like Allura as a villain. In some ways, she feels more like a classic supervillain. I love her voice. It's so alluring. So Secrets of Starlight was actually pretty cool. It had a lot of fun moments in it. It had a great musical number. I kind of liked its point as well. Kind of reminds me of a line from The Last Starfighter. It takes more than a scepter to rule. It takes more than possessing a magical artifact to be a leader. And almost tying into the previous episode is that despite everything that's happened and how hopeless it feels, it's about not giving in to the fear of these supervillains and standing up to them. And again, they stood up to them in their own way and they succeeded. So, roar. So overall, this chapter was actually really good. It had some very heavy moments in it, but it also had some pretty cool, awesome moments, and it was just so awesome seeing the ponies come together. So, roar. And there was a lot of interesting things that were introduced, like the dragon characters, and I hope we get to know the dragon characters at some point in the future, because we didn't really get to learn about them much here, but that was only because we were dealing with an evil supervillain, so I look forward to seeing where Allure and Make Your Mark goes, because now that they've essentially finished character and world building, now they can get on to those really special, memorable moments that make MLP so special, and I look forward to seeing more. So, roar! So, I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, thank you for commenting, liking, and subscribing, and until next time, this is Blue Star. Stay strong, and pony on. Blue Star out.